Hello, hello. Welcome back for those that have done other lessons, or welcome if this is the first lesson you're jumping into. So wanted to think about like what are the different parts of working with data and how did we sort of think about that or ground our work for this ADVizE data visualization experience for pre-service teachers project. So data is what we use in STEM. That's why we grounded this project in STEM methods courses, science, natural and social science, technology, engineering, and math. And so what do I mean by that? So those that are in the natural sciences, this visualization probably rings really true, or you've seen some version of it, right, with our next generation science standards, where there are these three different components, or three dimensions. We have our practices, which is what students do. We have our core ideas, which is what students know. And we have our cross-cutting concepts, what students think. Now, that is the language that the next generation science uses for science standards, but it is very similar to what Common Core Math uses for the math standards, and very similar to what C3 uses for our social studies practices and our computer science practices and domains, different things like that. So we're very good at using similar or slightly different words to basically mean the same thing. That we want our students across our different content areas to be doing what professionals do, to be learning the core foundational knowledge or ideas of our content area, and to be critically thinking about how these pieces relate to one another and across our different topic areas. So even if you are not teaching science and using this three dimensions, the essence is the same. But what I want to really emphasize and where we came from is data is actually what we use. We use data in a variety of different ways, but data is what we use to do all of these things. This is the difference between our STEM fields and our STEM practices and processes and approaches and the way that we make sense of the world, natural science, social science, technology, engineering, and math, than in our humanities. Not saying that one is better than the other, but just saying this is a difference between them. We use data in our STEM fields, and man, do we need our humanities, and they are different, and those differences are great, but we need to think about those differences. And one of those big differences is the data piece. And it's not just that we use data in multiple ways in our elementary and secondary education system for our students in these STEM classes. So we use data to support our learning of content that is already known. And we use data to answer or investigate questions that enable us to push the fields of STEM forward by learning new knowledge. So we've got these two things that are going on with the same thing, data, that we use. This is a lot for anybody to take on. So this is why it is critical for us to think about how do we support our students, our pre-service teachers, and their future students in getting really confident and comfortable working with making sense of data, especially now in the 21st century where everything is so data-driven, be it through our AI, our machine learning, or just all of our data analytics and data science. Like, we live in a data-driven society. So how do we build out that understanding of how we work with and make sense of data? And we can do it through our STEM fields. This is up to us across our STEM fields, not any one of us alone, but across our STEM fields to help our K-12 students become confident in that. The way we do that is by supporting our pre-service teachers. Another grounding component that we come from with this project is recognizing that it's messy to work with and make sense of data. It just is. And that we can't expect our students. So one, we need to sort of embrace that messiness. How do we embrace that messiness? By creating scaffolds. We can't expect our students to be like, amazing, perfect at it right out of the gates. We can't even really expect our pre-service teachers or our undergraduates to be amazing and perfect at it. This is something that we build the skill over time. We are working towards mastery of the skill. It is not a check, I've done it once and now I have mastered it. Kind of like drawing, where we need to go back and we think about, okay, so what are the initial steps? How do we start building that skill? And then what are the scaffolds that we can provide either in this early novice stage or each step along the way from this really early novice stage to this more expert stage, be it drawing or the same way we approach sports or music or cooking or any other skill-based thing that we have. We need to create the opportunities for that when working with data. A big piece of what we were trying to do as we were thinking about, okay, so how do we create that? How do we think about stepping back and creating those supports? And one thing that really resonated for us as we were building out this project is, one, our teacher prep programs are already chock-a-block full of lots of things for our pre-service teachers to get and to work on and start to master and prepare for their future classrooms. And data needs to be a part of that. So how do we round peg square hole this? How do we find space in the curriculum in our teacher prep programs for these opportunities for more exposure to and conversations, discussions about data? And as we were sort of thinking about this, wrestling with it, digging in a little deeper, we then also were thinking of like, well, okay, so when we're working with data, there's two components as well. There is the exploring data, which helps us generate insights. So data's coming in and we can think about this exploring phase as a chance for us to sort of, okay, kind of like narrow in and get a sense of like, what data do we have? What are some initial patterns we're seeing? What are some initial ways we can visualize the data to get a better sense and orient to it, to think about, oh, okay, these are some interesting pieces. I might want to explore those, to then get to explaining what's going on in the data or confirming what we were expecting to see in the data and pieces like that. And that explaining and confirming what we were thinking is a second step that helps us get to, so what does it mean and what can we say from the data? Both of these components, exploring and explaining, are super important. Explaining often shows up a bit more in the K-12 system, but exploring is a critical first component of working with and making sense of data. And so we decided, because we have this like really full teacher prep programs out there across the country, maybe one of the sort of best return on investments that we could do is test these supplemental curriculum activities that could feed into existing method courses that really build out students, pre-service teachers, confidence and comfortable themselves and the ability to teach this exploring data piece of it. And what's included in the exploring data piece? Well, we've got our asking questions, considering possible outcomes, generating data, quantifying data, organizing and processing data, visualizing it, revisualizing it, iterating again on those visuals, filtering, simplifying, transforming the data to reveal patterns. All these sort of early steps of working with the data and seeing what's there, orienting to it, starting to kind of either get us ready for or some initial describing and analyzing, like initial, but not deep in analyzing, interpreting the pattern, inferring meaning from the data, pieces like that. These are all super important, but they are all part of the explaining with the data or confirmatory data analysis. And again, we felt like that's done pretty well, or at least it is done often in the K-12 space. And so our pre-service teachers have a foundation to pull from for that. What they don't have as much of a foundation to pull from are these initial exploratory pieces. So that is where we grounded this project in, recognizing we can't do it all because teacher prep programs are already totally full. So what is a small piece that we can do to see, does creating opportunities around those small pieces, those early exploratory data analysis pieces, does that help shift pre-service data skills themselves, as well as self-efficacy and confidence? Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to pause the recording and think about these three questions for you. So what are you currently doing with data in your methods class or whichever course that you teach? So for your pre-service teachers, where are they currently seeing data? What are they currently doing with the data? What are your pre-service teachers typically good at when you're asking them to do those activities, do those steps with the data? And then also, what do your students typically struggle with when they are doing those steps? So pause the video, think to yourself about how that relates to sort of your teaching previously as we're stepping into these additional resources that we built out for the project. Okay, and then when you're ready, come back, unpause, and keep going forward. Okay, hopefully you paused, you were able to think about these 3 questions of how it relates to your experience with your students. We have a range of, here's just a range of samples of the kinds of responses that previous faculty in implementations in our project were saying. So what are some things that they're currently doing? So we complete a birth rate data model. We just counted the number of peas in a sugar snap pea pods and collected and analyzed the data. We've done a seed dispersal activity. We've had students collect data on tree height using a NASA activity. Wide range of ways that we are currently having students work with data in our methods classes. Some of yours might be up here, like we use sources like the New York Times. What's going on with the graph? Great source. We incorporate math and science in 5E lesson plans, different things. So wide range of how we are all integrating data in. What's interesting is that there was some overlap and there were some like consistencies on sort of what students are generally good at. Types of graphs, comfortable with types of graphs. They're usually good at collecting data, these types of things. So we heard a lot of like, yeah, they're pretty good at collecting data. They're, pretty good at making some graphs. So like, even though we're lots of different ways, we're integrating data in, what students are good at is there's some big themes that came through as we were asking our faculty. Curious if any of these are resonating with what you're finding with your pre-service teachers and what they're good at coming into your courses in terms of working with data. Maybe what shouldn't be surprising, but was always this nice like, oh, it's not just me. For our faculty, as we were going through, is like, there's also some common themes on what pre-service students or pre-service teachers are struggling with in terms of working with data. So evaluating data patterns as evidence, reading and interpreting data from graphs, struggling with the platform, struggling with reading and interpreting, probably interpretation of the analyzing the data, right? So we're seeing some of those kind of other components that are commonly coming up. And now you might be thinking, but Kristen, you said you were focused on exploratory data skills, and a lot of these are about analyzing and interpreting data. And I will say, yes, you are correct. And what we found was that by focusing on pre-service teachers thinking about working on exploratory data skills, those initial data skills components that had often been overlooked or undertaught when they were going through their K-12 experience, actually enhanced and supported their ability to analyze and interpret data going forward. So these common struggles, many of them in the explaining or confirmatory data analysis, were aided by going upstream, in essence, and helping them build out their better understanding of exploratory data skills. And this shouldn't be sort of too surprising, but I just really want to reiterate, like, time on exploring data and thinking about that influences and sets our students, our pre-service teachers and their future students up for more success in that also super important explanatory or confirmatory data analysis that we have. It's a both and, not an either or. So some takeaways. Exploratory data skills are different than explanatory or confirmatory data analysis. And we need to teach both. The ADVizE project purposefully limited the emphasis to exploratory data skills. As I've said, they're less taught traditionally in the K-12, and they're a key component to authentically working with data. So we found that was the area that we were like, let's work on that and see if it can shift the needle for pre-service teachers broadly working with and making sense of data. So in case it has not been clear, we very much know that the resources that you are about to further explore do not cover everything that works with data. And this was challenging and a big tension constantly on the team of like, but, we need this, we need that. And teacher prep programs are already chock-a-block full. So how did this was a decision point that we made. So just know that going in. There's our caveat. And there are a range of ways that we are currently working with data in pre-surveyed methods classes, but many of our struggles and our successes are similar across the country. So that is a nice, like, oh, it's not just me. Oh, it's not just my pre-service teachers. This is something we are seeing across the country, across many, many pre-service teachers, and it's not their fault. But how can we address that and help augment that and support that before we send them off into the classroom to teach our future students? So with that, hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of like, what do we mean? What are the components that we're working on here? What are you about to sort of undertake and get exposure to? And why do they not cover everything that relates to making sense of and working with data? Until the next lesson, I hope you have a good day and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.